This is our second day on section 1.3, and we're going to talk about congruent segments. Congruent segments are segments with the same length. Congruent is a key word. The congruent symbol is an equal sign with a little squiggle on top. And notice we're talking about segments. We're not talking about congruent lengths. We're talking about congruent segments. So they are segments with the same length. So if we were talking about this, I could say, and this is how we mark congruent segments. If we look at this hash mark and this hash mark are both a single, which means segment AE is congruent to segment AB. It would be incorrect to say AE is congruent to AB because it's segments, not lengths. So that is referring to the distance from A to B, or A to E. That's bad. We need the segment bars on top. All right, if we look at the next two, do you see these two tick marks? That associates ED with CD, so we would say segment ED is congruent to segment CD. So one of the things I really want to emphasize, because it's so very important, is draw, label, and mark. So first I have to draw a segment PG and a segment RA. So I've drawn two segments. The label part is next. I'm going to label this with P and G because the segment's named for its endpoints, and this is going to be R and A. So I have labeled my diagram. Now the mark part means, what does congruent mean? Well, that means that this length is the same as that length. So we have to mark them congruent. Otherwise, you can't assume that they are congruent. Draw, label, mark. Let's do it again. So I'm going to draw, label, mark, triangle ABC. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a triangle. Now I'm going to label. How do I know how to label this triangle? Well, right there it's telling me what I need to do. One vertex is A, one is B, and one is C. All right, so now I've labeled. Now I need to mark. They're telling me that segment AB, which is here, is congruent to segment BC, which is there. Now, they don't look congruent, and I will never, ever, ever draw a diagram to scale. So don't ever rely on one of my pictures for the relationships, because I will purposely draw it wrong, hoping that to test to see if you truly understand what these congruent marks mean. Even though they don't look congruent, these tick marks are saying that the distance from A to B is the same as the distance from B to C. My diagram is obviously not correct. All right, so now this is a U try. This is where we highlight. This is your turn. You are going to do quadrilateral quad. That's a four-sided figure. And I just want to make sure that you all are aware that, and possibly not, because this is geometry and this is where you would learn it for the first time. And I didn't do a very good job with my pictures, so we're going to assume that these connect. But when you label a figure, triangle is easy. But when you go to label something with more than 3 sides, I don't care where you start. I'm starting there. But now, if I choose to go up, you have to go, I'm going in a clockwise direction. This must be A, this must be D. Or, that's not very, that should be straight. If I'd started here and went down, then I'm going in a counterclockwise direction, and that must be A, and that must be D. So just, this is your first experience with it. That's going to be important. So I need you to draw, mark, and label. All right, so now we've already talked about congruent segments. This is a word map, and I'm only asking you to do word maps on critically important definitions. You will see this again. So I want you to define this in your own words. I gave you a textbook definition. Put it in your own words. You put it in your own words, you own it. Then you're going to explain how to draw, label, mark. Those are 3 important words, congruent segments, and then you're going to give me an example. Now I'm asking you for their relationship, and when I ask for relationship, I'm basically asking what is their mathematical relationship. What I want to try to do is we have to get this from words into symbols or into something that math speaks. Math Okay, so I can't spell. We have to get this into something that we can relate to mathematically. So this is a mathematical relationship. Now, based on this mathematical relationship, when you are told that you have congruent segments, what do you look for? And it goes back to this relationship. What do you look for? And then how do you mathematically deal with them? This is where you quantify these words. In other words, when you quantify, you are able to put it in such a language or a relationship that you literally can treat it using symbols and expressions and mathematical sentences, we'll say. That's what I mean by quantify. So you need to tell me when you hear the word congruent segments, see the word congruent segments, what do you look for and how do you mathematically deal with them? So this is one of those things that you better be filled out and done well because that's part of your note grade. All right, so now midpoint. All right, there's a key word here and it happens to be point. Midpoint of a segment is, oh my goodness, it's a point. Midpoint is a point. So it's a midpoint of a segment. Mid, you probably guess maybe what that might mean. Midpoint of a segment is a point that separates a segment into two equal segments. All right, so we're going to practice draw, mark, label. All right, so we're given a segment TQ. P is the midpoint, draw, label, and mark. So I've drawn it. Now I'm going to label it. That means that my segment TQ, because the segment's named for its endpoints, and P is the midpoint, so I should have a P. My labeling is finished. Now I need to mark. How do I mark this? Well, if you don't understand what a midpoint is, then that's going to be an issue. What does a midpoint do? It separates a segment into two equal segments. How do we mark congruent segments? There it is. So we know that segment TP is congruent to segment PQ. All right, we get to try this again. So now we've got D is the midpoint of LH. So here's my segment. I'm going to go in and I'm going to label it now. So one endpoint is L, the other endpoint is H, and I should have D that is the midpoint. So my drawing is done, my labeling is done. How do I mark? What does midpoint tell you? Two congruent segments. So now that tells me that segment LD is congruent to segment DH, and that means that D is a midpoint. All right. So when you look at these two examples, is N the midpoint of GH? Is B a midpoint of AC? Now I'm telling you now, one of these is yes and one of these is no. You cannot look at a diagram and assume. When I look at this diagram, it looks like N happens to be in the center of the segment, but we can't guarantee this. This is a resounding no. Why is it a no? Because there are no marks. If there are no marks showing congruence, then you cannot assume that there's anything congruent going on here. Now, when I look at this, I see this mark, which is telling me that this segment happens to be congruent to this segment. Therefore, B must be the midpoint. Why can I conclude here? Because the diagram is marked. All right, so now your job, here's another you try. You're going to highlight this. You're going to draw, label, and mark. So you might want to pause me. All right, so we just went over midpoint of a segment. Your job now is to define it in your own words. Midpoint is a definition you're going to be using over and over and over and over and over again. So you're going to explain how to draw, label, and mark, and you're going to give an example. What does a midpoint do to a segment? So in this case, I'm looking for a mathematical relationship. And when there's a word map, this is the reason why, because there is a mathematical relationship I need you to pay attention to. All right, and then over here, when given a midpoint, as soon as you hear midpoint, you should automatically look for something. That's what you're going to write here, and then you're going to tell me what you do mathematically with it when you find it. So you need to put me on pause again to finish this word map. All right, now we're going to apply the definitions of midpoint. Well, we haven't done segment bisector, so we'll just kind of scratch that, and congruent segment. So here's my first one. So AB is congruent to CD. And what is missing? Hopefully you noticed the segment bars were missing. All right, now that I have correct notation, the question is, when you see congruent segments, what do you look for? What do you see? What are you supposed to find? You're supposed to look for congruent segments means two equal lengths. All right? So based on this information, this tells you how to write the equation. You've got AB. In fact, if you want, you can draw segment AB. You can draw segment CD. And I prefer that you do the drawing. Mark them. All right, now, if AB is 3x minus 5, then I'm going to put 3x minus 5 on that segment. CD is x plus 15. I'm going to put it on that segment. What do these marks mean? These marks mean that 3x minus 5 equals x plus 15. Now, I want you to justify. Why did you write that equation? What told you to? And it had to do with definition of congruent segments. Because what were you given? You were given two congruent segments. From here, the expectation is that you solve. So I'm going to subtract x. So I'm going to end up with 2x minus 5 equals 15. From here, I'm going to add 5. So I add 5 and I add 5. I've got 2x is equal to 20. Divide by 2, I get x is equal to 10. Now, did I ask you to find x? No, I did not. I asked you to find AB. Nothing on top, that means distance. And I must always not let you stop at x. I'm going to ask you for more. What is AB? Well, AB is 3 times x minus 5. Notice the space I left. What is x? Oh, that is 10. So AB is going to be 30 minus 5, or AB is 25. Next question. M is the midpoint of AB. Draw, mark, label. I can't even begin to tell you how important this is. You don't do it, you may be lost. So this is A, B. We've got M to be a midpoint. What does that mean? That means this segment, mark it, is congruent to that segment. So they told us AM is 6. They want you to find the length from A all the way over to B. Well, if you've drawn this picture and you've marked it and you've labeled it, look at this. If this is 6, this must also be 6. So if I want to know the length of AB, then I'm going to say 6 plus 6, segment addition, which is 12. Or you could say AB is double 6, which still is 12. All right, so that's your arithmetic example. But however, you're better than that. We're going to go into another arithmetic. Just kidding. All right, one more arithmetic example. P is the midpoint of RT. Stop. Draw yourself a picture. Picture's worth 1,000 words. I'm going to be a broken record. RT. And then you're going to put P as a midpoint. You're going to mark it. All right, now you're going to finish the problem. RT is 32. That means from here to here, it is 32. They want PT. Well, PT is just this part. Well, what do you know about the two parts? They are equal. So if I take 32 and I divide it by 2, remember, if you add, subtract, multiply, or divide, you show me work. If you add, subtract, multiply, divide, you show me work. So this is going to be 16. How did we know to do that? Because of definition of a midpoint. All right, and that's all said, and that's all fine and dandy, but to be honest with you, do I think that that's the way it's going to appear on the EOC? If I were writing it, no, it wouldn't be. All right. When I group this, hold on. When I group this, let me ungroup it. It's not working. Oh, there we go. That is where our segment bar should be. So if Q is the midpoint of MN, what is the first thing that you're going to do? First thing you're going to do is you are going to draw a picture. Picture, picture, picture. All right. So now we're going to have M is this endpoint. N is that endpoint. Q now is the midpoint. Mark the diagram. All right. So MQ. On MQ, I'm putting 7x minus 15. On QN, here's QN, I am putting 4x plus 33. You need to know how to write the equation. What do you know about a midpoint? If you hear the word midpoint, what do you look for? And there's the markings right there. You look for two equal segments. So we're going to have 7x minus 15 is equal to 4x plus 33. Justify. Every time you write the equation, justify why. Definition of midpoint. All right, so now let's solve. I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. So I'm going to have 3x minus 15 is equal to 33. I am going to add 15 to both sides, so I'll have 3x is equal to 48. Then we're going to divide by 3, and we're going to get x to be 16. Now, did I ask for x? I don't think I asked for x. Yes, we need x, but I didn't ask for x. What did I ask for? I said to find mn. All right, so there's several ways to find mn, and I'm going to write all the ways that we could possibly do this. So let me start with this one. The first thing we could do, let me move this up, is I could say mn is equal to 7 times 16 minus 15 plus 4 times 16 plus 33. Or I could say, well, you know what? mn is just 2 times the 7 times 16 minus 15. Or someone else might say, well, but you know what? It's double qn, so that's 2 times 4x. Since we know what x is, we want to put in, this is 4 times 16 plus 33. It doesn't matter, you should get the same answer. So I'm going to finish this one. This is going to be 2 times 64 plus 33, and that is going to be 2 times 97, which is going to be 14,194. All right, so now we're going to go to the next slide, and now it's going to tell us that T is the midpoint of CU. So you got to draw a picture, want to see the pictures. So C is this side, U is this side. Yes, this is in the wrong place. It moved. All right, so now this is the draw. I'm in the middle of the label. I've got to get my T in there, and now the mark. So what do they tell us? CU from here all the way over to here is 10x minus 45. CT is 3x minus 2. Well, if CT is 3x minus 2 because of these tick marks, then this has to be 3x minus 2. So now by angle addition that we did yesterday, we would have 3x minus 2 plus 3x minus 2 is equal to 10x minus 45. All right, forgot the little x, I'll squeeze it in there. Now, I don't want to see angle addition. I know this relationship exists because of definition of midpoint. If I didn't know about definition of midpoint, angle addition wouldn't have helped us at all because we wouldn't have known that. Just as an aside, you could have said 2 times 3x minus 2 is equal to 10x minus 45. That is certainly another option. All right, I'm combining like terms. We got 6x minus 4 is equal to 10x minus 45. So from here, I'm going to choose to subtract 6x, which gives me negative 4 is equal to 4x minus 45. Now I'm going to add 45, so I'm going to end up with 41 is equal to 4x, or x is 41 over 4. But notice, it's not what I asked. I asked for CU. Well, CU's the whole thing. So CU is going to be 10 times 41 over 4 minus 45. You need to be able to work with fractions. I don't know if you will not have a calculator on every question on the EOC, so we need to work on this. This is going to be 410 over 4. Now, when you add fractions, you have to have a common denominator. So that's going to be minus something over 4. What did I multiply 1 by to get the common denominator? 4. 45 times 4 is 180. So now if I take 410 and I subtract 180, I'm going to end up with the CU to be 230 over 4. All right, and I believe it is your turn. So here you're going to practice midpoint using arithmetic first. Then you're going to practice congruent segments with algebra, and you're going to practice midpoint with algebra. So this is the time that you highlight the you try, you put me on pause, and get busy. And this is going to be the conclusion of what we do today. Tomorrow's lesson is all about construction, so make sure you have your constructions ready. And that would be your compass and your straight edge.